Hello, so today we're going to be talking about inequalities with variables on both sides. So the steps to solve are going to be distribute and or combine like terms if necessary. So we've been doing that. We've done combining like terms since the first day that we learned material, and we did distribute that first Monday, Tuesday when we came back, and we've been working on them with solving equations. Now we're just doing it with inequalities with variables on both sides. So this is nothing new. We also talked about this on Friday. Now, part 2 is we're going to collect variables on one side of the inequality, and then we're going to collect constants on the other side of the inequality. And then our last step is going to be solve the inequality. When we say solve the inequality, that normally means that we're going to multiply or divide to get rid of our coefficient so that we have our variable completely isolated. Now, when we're in class, in the chat, we're going to describe when it's necessary to flip the inequality sign. So if you're watching this prior to class, when we flip the inequality sign, it's normally when we're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. And that's because when we multiply or divide by a negative, it makes our statement untrue if we don't flip it. We've done a couple of examples before, and if you're not completely sure, plug in a number and see if the statement is true or not. If it's not true, you need to flip your sign. Another time when you may need to flip your sign is if you want to rearrange your equation. So if I have 2 is less than x, but I want x to be first, I would have to say x is greater than 2. We would have to flip the sign. Okay. So now we're going to do a couple practice problems. We're going to start off a little bit simple, and we're going to do some problems without distribution or like terms. That means we're going to we're going to start on step 1, which means move our variables. And when we move our variables, we want to move the smallest one when possible. That way we can avoid having negative coefficients so that we won't have to multiply or divide by a negative number. This makes it so that we don't have to flip our sign or remember flipping our sign. So as long as we move the smallest variable, we're going to avoid having to flip the sign when multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at our variables for step 1 for our first equation. And so we have 21x and we have 18x. So we're going to move the smallest one, and the smallest one's 18x. So we'll subtract 18x from both sides. 21 minus 18 is going to be a 3x. We're going to bring down our negative 9, and we're left with just 12 on this side. Step 2, we're going to move our constant. So we want to get our constant away from our variable. So we got to get rid of the negative 9, so we're going to add 9 to both sides. Negative 9 plus 9 is going to cancel. 12 plus 9 is going to be 21. So we have 3x is greater than or equal to 21. And our step 3 is to solve. And like I said, in step 3, that's when we're going to multiply or divide. We want to get rid of our coefficient. So to get rid of this 3, we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3. So 3x divided by 3 and 21 divided by 3. I went ahead and did it with a slash because I don't want to run out of space because the boxes aren't too big. So when we do this, our 3's are going to cancel out with our x, and 3 goes into 21 7 times. So we have x is greater than or equal to 7. Our next problem, we have negative 5x plus 14x is greater than negative 9x plus 2. So like I said, we're going to get rid of our smallest, and when dealing with negative numbers, the bigger number that's a negative is going to be the smallest number. So we're going to have the negative 9 is what we want to get rid of, and to get rid of a negative 9, we're going to add 9 to both sides, so plus 9x. These 9's are going to cancel. When we add 9x to negative 5x, we're going to have a positive 4x. So positive 4x plus 14 is greater than 2 because we're only left with 2 on this side. So now we're going to move our constant. When we move our constant, we're going to move it away from the side with the variable. So we're going to go ahead and move our 14 over here. So we have to subtract 14 from both sides. That's going to leave us with the 4x minus 12. Now to solve, we're going to do our multiplication or division. We have 4x, so we're going to divide both sides by 4. Our coefficients right here, the 4 and the divide by 4 are going to cancel out. We're going to be left with just x. and 4 goes into negative 12, negative 3 times. So we have x is greater than negative 3. Now we have 25 minus 7x is less than or equal to 3x plus 50. We want to get rid of the smallest variable, so we have a negative and a positive, so our negative will be the smallest. So we're just going to add 7x to both sides to cancel that out. When we do that, the 7's cancel, the 7x's cancel, we're left with just 25 on this side. 7 plus 3 is 10, so we have 10x. And then we have plus 50 because we didn't do anything to that. Now we're going to move our variables, our constants away from our variable. So our constant's going to go over here. So we got to do the opposite of add and subtract 50 from both sides. Our 50s over here will cancel. We take 50 away from 25. We're going to have negative 25 is less than or equal to 10. Well, 10x. And then we have to solve. So we got to go ahead and get rid of this coefficient right here. So we have to divide both sides by 10. Our 10s over here cancel, and we divide this by 10, we're going to have a negative 2.5. So negative 2.5 is less than or equal to x, or it could be x is greater than or equal to negative 2.5. So if I want to put the x over here, I have to flip the sign. So to flip the equation, you flip the sign. Okay. So now we're going to do some other practice problems just like we've been doing. We're going to solve the inequalities, then choose a number in your solution to check it, and then sketch a graph. So we're going to look for every part. So we're going to look for distributing, combining like terms. Then we're going to move our variables, just like we just did. Add or subtract to move our constants, and then multiply or divide to get rid of our coefficients. The MAM are the exact 3 steps that we did on the last page. So now we're just throwing in these 2 steps, distribute and combine like terms. So for distribute, we're looking for parentheses. There's some parentheses right here. So we're going to go ahead and multiply it out. 2 times negative 3x is going to be a negative 6x. 2 times 1 is going to be a 2. And if we don't do anything to anything else, we're just going to bring it down. So we have negative 6x plus 2 is less than negative 5x plus 14. So we're going to go ahead and put a check on the distribute. Then we're going to check to see if we have any like terms. So we have variable, constant, variable, constant. So no like terms. So now we need to move our variables. So we have to figure out which one's smaller. We have a negative 6x and a negative 5x. So this is the bigger negative number. So we're going to move that one over. So we're going to add 6x to both sides. This is supposed to say an x. I'll fix that here in a little bit. So that should say 6x. When you do that, these are going to cancel right here. We're going to be left with the 2. And then we're going to have just the x because you're taking 5 away from 6 plus 14. So we'll go ahead and put a check over here. Then we got to get rid of our constant away from our variable. So we're going to move that to the other side by subtracting 14 from both sides. The 14s cancel. Over here, we're going to have a negative 12 is less than x. And so we did our addition and subtraction, but we don't have any multiplication or division we have to do because we already have x isolated by itself. So this is going to be negative 12 is less than x, or you could say x is greater than negative 12. Remember, if I want to rearrange it, I have to flip the sign. So now we're going to check. To check, we're going to pick a number that's greater than negative 12. Let x equal 0, because 0 is bigger than any negative number. So we're just going to replace x with 0 in the original equation. So we have 2 parentheses, negative 3 times 0 plus 1, close parentheses, is less than negative 5 times 0 plus 14. Well, this is going to be a 0, and this is going to become a 0 because anything times 0 is 0. So we have 2 parentheses 0 plus 1 is less than 0 plus 14, which is the same thing as 2 times 1 is less than 14. So 2 is less than 14, and that's correct. 2 is less than 14. So remember, whenever we're going to graph, we want numbers below and above our number. So our number is negative 12, so we'll have some below and some above. So we have starting at negative 15 to negative 5. It could be any way, like any amount of numbers below or above. We just need to make sure that we have a couple around our number. Now, we look at our sign. If there's a line underneath, it's going to be a closed circle. If there's not a line, it's going to be open. So we don't have a line, so we're going to have an open circle at negative 12. And then because x is greater than anything above it. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next one. Oops, I pushed that button too many times. Okay, so we look for parentheses to distribute. We have parentheses right here. So negative times x is negative x. Negative times negative 41 is going to be a positive 41. And if you bring down the other stuff, go ahead and put a check on our distribute. If we want to combine like terms, we go ahead and look to see if we have any. We have a constant and a variable, and then a variable and a constant, so we don't have any. When we decide to move our variables, we move the smallest one. We have a 9x and a negative x. Well, our negative will be smaller than a positive, so we'll move our negative. So we're going to add x to both sides. Our x's over here cancel. X plus 9x is a 10x, so we have 19 plus 10x is less than or equal to 41. Put a check over here. Now we need to add or subtract to get rid of our constant from our variable. So we have a 19, so we're going to go ahead to move it to this side. We're going to subtract 19 from both sides. These 19s will cancel. We'll be left with just 10x over here, and then we're going to have a 22. So 10x is less than 22. Put a check over here. Then we have to multiply or divide. So we have 10x, which is the same thing as 10 times x. So we're going to go ahead and divide 10 by 10 on both sides. Our 10s over here cancel. We're left with just x. And then we have 2.2 because we just move it over one spot whenever we divide by 10. So we have x is less than or equal to 2.2. So now we're going to pick a number less than 2.2 to check our answer. I'm just going to let x equal 2. So it is under it, not by much, but it's under it. And we're going to go ahead and replace any x in our original equation with the number 2. So you have 19 plus 9 times 2 is less than or equal to negative parentheses 2 minus 41 close parentheses. So 9 times 2 is 18. And then I'm just going to go ahead and say 2 minus 41 is negative 39. Then when I add 19 and 18, I get 37 is less than or equal to negative times a negative, so 39. And that's correct. Now, because this is a decimal, I'm going to start moving this by tenth spaces. So 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, and so on to make sure that I include that correct spot. We have a line underneath, which means we're going to have a closed circle because it could also be equal to 2.2. So I have a closed circle at 2.2. And then it says it's less than, so it's everything to the left. Now, I could have, when I have an equal sign, I could check it for that number because it's less than or equal to. But the problem with that is if I had to flip my sign and I was checking with the 2.2, I would get a correct answer no matter if it was less than or greater than. So that's the reason I didn't check 2.2 as my answer, because I wouldn't tell me if it's less than or greater than. So I tried less than to see if I have the correct range, because I know I'm going to have that value included no matter what. Okay, so we have one more problem. So we're going to solve the inequality again, choose a number to check our solution, and then sketch the graph. So first we're going to look for the D to distribute, which is going to be any parentheses that I see. So I actually see two groups of parentheses, so we'll start with the first one. Negative 4 times 3 is going to be a negative 12. Negative 4 times 3x is going to be a negative 12x. 6 times 4 is going to be 24. 6 times negative x is going to be a negative 6x. And I'm just going to bring down my inequality symbol because there's nothing left. I'll put a check next to distribute. Looking for like terms, constant, variable, or constant variable, so we have no like terms. We're going to move our variable, and we're going to pick the smallest one. Well, negative 12x is smaller than negative 6x, so we're going to move that one over. We'll add 12x to both sides. These will cancel. We'll be stuck with just negative 12 is greater than 24 plus 6x. We'll go ahead and put a check. Now we need to move our constant. So our constant needs to come over here away from our variable. So I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. These will cancel. This is going to be a negative 36 is greater than 6x. So I put a check. Then I have to get rid of this 6. So since it's multiplication, I'm going to do division and divide both sides by 6. These 6's will cancel. And then negative 36 divided by 6 is going to be 6. So I have negative 6 is greater than x, or x is less than negative 6. And I'll put a check mark. So we're going to go ahead and see if this is correct. So I'm going to pick a number that's less than -6. Let x equal -10. So I have -4 parentheses, 3 plus 3 times -10 close parentheses is greater than 6 parentheses 4 minus -10 close parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute this part. So that's -4 parentheses 3 minus 30 is greater than 6 parentheses 4 plus 10, because the negative, when you subtract the negative, you're adding. Then 3 minus 30 is -27. 4 plus 10 is 14. And then when I multiply these, -4 times -27 is 108. 6 times 14 is 84. You can always use a calculator if you're not quite sure about those. But 108 is greater than 84, so that is correct. When I graph, I make sure I include numbers below and above -6. There's no line underneath, so it's going to be open. And it's anything less than, so we're going to go to the left again. So these are some examples on how to solve multi-step inequalities with variables on both sides. So we've been taking it a little bit at a time. So we did 1- and 2-step inequalities, then we did multi-step inequalities, and now we're throwing in variables on both sides. So we're just giving you a step at a time. That's going to be the rest of the inequalities that we're going to go over as of right now. Next, we're going to talk about literal equations. So how are y'all feeling? Hopefully you're feeling well. If not, I do have tutorials every day between 1 and 2 p.m. and I can help you out. But I want you to get some practice on this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and log on to IXL and do some practice so that we can master inequalities. If you need any help, once again, please just come to tutorials.